Train the muscles, not the joints.
Mountain. Welcome to Natural Gallant Bodybuilding, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about controlling the weight. Now, I recently had a troll or somebody, maybe they're a nice person actually, maybe this person's totally nice or whatever, and they're just not understanding what I'm doing or why I'm doing it, which is kind of a constant theme on YouTube anyway. But they're saying, hey, you're training horrible, your form is all off, you're not controlling the weight. And he was saying this specifically around a back training video that I did. Now, one thing I want to say is that there's a big misunderstanding out there with rep speed and controlling the weight. So one could argue that you can still have control over a certain weight where you're not going to lose your balance, you're not flying out of the groove or losing your groove when you're using rep speeds that are a little faster. Really, like once you've got your groove, once you're locked into a groove, you can do faster rep speeds and still be in control of the weight and not be using massive amounts of momentum. M cubed, massive amounts of momentum, because I'm going to forget the A and just use the M, massive amounts of momentum, M cubed. So you're not going to be M cubed. So the fact is that a lot of times people say control the weight, that's the only way to gain muscle, slow reps, the only way to gain muscle, because they have this idea that controlling the weight and slow reps are the same thing and that's the only way to train a muscle group. Listen to me closely. You are under my control. You are under my control. You will not defy me. Why are you messing with me? Why are you messing with me? There are certain muscle groups that will respond very well to that type of training. And again, this will be different for one person to the next, but I have noticed that there are certain muscle groups that seem to respond well to different ways of stimulating the muscle. This could be just based on the insertion points, based on the slow twitch fibers to fast twitch fibers, based on the recruitment, the ability of the body to recruit those muscle groups. There could be a lot of variables that are contributing to this. So that's why I always encourage you to try many different techniques. Now, one thing you will find is that when you are too strict on a certain muscle group, you'll notice that other muscle groups actually take over instead of the one that you want to hit, especially with certain exercises. Now, you have a couple choices in this case. Avoid that exercise altogether and just use an exercise where you feel you hit your muscle group, or maybe you're still not hitting the muscle group the way you want by changing exercises, and you go back to this other exercise, such as say barbell curls, and you notice that when you lean forward a little bit and then a little bit of a tiny swing to get out of the bottom, and then you get way more tension on the muscle belly when you're halfway up, this might be the secret trick in order for you to hit that muscle group you just can't hit from any other exercise when you're going super strict or super slow. So there's a way that forces play out which is not necessarily linear like people think. They think, oh, it's just nothing but, contraction and stretch and contraction. That's all that happens. No, the forces play out in a much more complicated way, and sometimes through not being overly strict, you can exploit certain muscle fibers or certain parts of the muscle. You can really hit that belly where you couldn't before. Now, another thing I've noticed over the years is that there are certain muscle groups that you can go strict and slow, but the strict and slow approach does not cause enough muscular damage to really create muscle mass. It just does not break those hardy fibers down. There are certain areas that are so dense. The muscle fibers are so dense, and they have a heavy amount of endurance or isometric fibers in there, and they seem to respond better to a little bit of ballistic training, and they're not as prone to tearing. So say with biceps, if you start swinging the weight all day long and then at the bottom just totally stretching, you may risk a bicep tear. 100% if you're going too heavy and you're using too much ballistic movements and too much swinging, and you're not in control of the weight, especially at the bottom, there can be a possibility of a bicep tear. Say preacher curl, for instance. If you lower the weight too fast and then suddenly stop at the bottom, there's a strong possibility that you will pull or tear the bicep doing so if you have enough weight involved and say your biceps are tight that day or whatever. So this is a place where you would not want to apply momentum 100% because your joint and your muscle is in a compromised position. Now, when it comes down to back, especially with those traps and with those structural muscle fibers that are by the spine, like the traps and rhomboids and things, they seem to be more hardy as far as muscles go. They seem to be able to take more of a beating. So if there's a little bit more of a ballistic sort of sudden stop at the stretch position of the muscle, that seems to be the very thing in some cases that is needed in order to stimulate that muscle group into growth, which is why you see some guys walking around with big traps and they actually just are doing little bouncing movements, but they're really forcing the muscle to stretch down aggressively, constantly. So this is how they're getting the development in the traps. But if they applied that same technique to, say, leg extensions, maybe they would have a problem with their knees. Or if they tried the same technique with preacher curls, they'd have a torn bicep. You see what I'm saying? So each movement and each muscle group will have different rules around what might be the best way for you to stimulate that area. So, like I said, controlling the weight is a good thing, 100%. You want to be in control. You don't want to totally lose control of the weight, but sometimes momentum is necessary in order to hit a certain muscle group, because when you're super strict, other muscles will take over, and then certain muscle groups just never ever get hit, or they just do not get the stimulus that they need in order to create growth. So that's why you'll see that sometimes, yeah, you'll see me do some strict movements. Sometimes you'll see me do some swinging movements and stuff. What I'm trying to do is work with the symphony of forces to make sure that I'm hitting a certain muscle group. And of course, this is also exacerbated by me having a dislocating shoulder from hockey and stuff, where the joint is not as stable in the joint. So I need to change the way I curl or change the way I lateral raise to make sure I keep that stress on the muscle. So I have to preload the muscle in order to create an illusory stability in the joint, and therefore I can keep that constant tension on the muscle group. Where somebody that has a full labrum and it's all connected and everything, they wouldn't have to do that. They would just basically do the movements and trust that the joint would stabilize, and they wouldn't have to preload the muscle. They could actually maybe totally relax at the bottom, and maybe there would still be a little bit of a stretch that they experience in the muscle and some tension. Whereas with my situation, it demands that I keep a slight bend or slight tension in the muscle in order to keep the contraction going and to stabilize the joint at the same time. So you may find this with your training. There may be certain muscle groups or certain injuries that you've had in certain areas that demand a slight differing technique as opposed to the perfect scenario, right? The perfect form scenario. So yeah, try to control the weight as best you can, but you may notice that there are certain areas that are not responding from super slow reps and super control. So there's also something to be said for fast reps. I talked about this in the slow reps versus fast reps video, where fast reps will hit different muscle fibers. They'll hit the power fibers, and the power fibers, the fast twitch fibers, are responsible for a lot of muscle mass. So you don't want to leave them out. So sometimes if you're just doing slow reps all the time, you might notice that you're not getting the development you need. So based on your own genetics, you're going to have to find out which type of stimulus seems to work best for individual area, right? Whether it's the slow twitch fiber type of stimulus or whether it's the fast twitch fiber type of stimulus. And rep speed does play a role in which type of muscle fiber gets hit. So yeah, that's why people are arguing, because people are different genetically, and some people are responding better to one technique as opposed to another. Now, the fallacy, which is pretty common, and it happened to me a lot in my training and stuff, is that whenever you try something new, you're going to notice that you're going to get some results. If it's something totally new that you've never done before, you may start working a muscle fiber or muscle group in a different way, and you might be getting results because you're doing something new and the body's shocked into some sort of growth. And it's always common for newbies or people that are new, they try something new, they start doing some slow reps, they start getting a pump, and they start getting a little bit of muscle mass, and they say, oh, this is the secret, this is the secret to gaining muscle mass. And then of course, a few years later, if you talk to them and they try a different type of technique, then they're like, oh wow, I got results from this different technique. It's totally different than I ever trained before. And then that's the secret to muscle mass. So you got to be careful about saying, this is the only way, because as you go along this path, you're going to discover that sometimes it's a stimulus that you need right now that's going to cause the most results, not necessarily just one type of stimulus that's responsible for your entire bodybuilding path. Okay, let this be a lesson to you. Nobody can control nature, and you can't control rocks, and you sure as hell can't control the mountain. So here was my lesson last night. I'm giving the mountain a talk. I'm giving the rock a talk. You are under my control. You will not defy me. I'm saying, hey, you know, you're going to submit to my will. And here, I shit you not, is what happens to me when I'm on my way home from the mountain. As you can see, flat tire. Tire's flat. One of these things doesn't belong with the other. Anyway, as you can see, I had to change the tire because a rock, I shit you not, a rock, okay? I'm talking to a rock, and then a rock splits my tire when I come back because they put some new rock or shale type rock in this one area of the road. I'm not sure why, and I'm pretty sure it was a rock that actually seared the tire, but I'm not sure. I'll find out when I take this in for repairs once there's a repair shop open. But yeah, pretty hilarious story, right? I'm giving the rock, like, it's the first time I've given a rock a lecture, and then a rock comes back and punctures my tire. Crazy. It's like the mountain was telling me it was listening. Mountain. So anyway, I hope this helps you out in your training. Thanks a lot for watching. If you need to get a hold of me, just go to naturalgallantbodybuilding.com. Right here. It's right here. Sorry about that. I don't even know what I was pointing over there. And thanks a lot to the patient supporters, and take care for now. And mountain.